"Get your hands off my daughter. You're not qualified to be here," screamed Catherine Lowell, CEO of one of the nation's largest tech empires, shoving the new nanny away from her 8-year-old child. Little Sophie was curled on the marble floor of the $15 million mansion, gasping for air in the grip of another crippling anxiety attack. Over the past 2 years, 3 world-renowned therapists, 2 child psychiatrists, and a private medical team had all tried and failed to help Sophie. Yet in that moment, only 3 days into her new job, the nanny Elena Moore remained composed. "Mrs. Lowell," Elena said softly, "your daughter doesn't need more shouting. She needs someone who actually understands what she's feeling." Catherine scoffed, fury flashing in her eyes. "You're just a nanny. Don't throw cheap psychology tricks at me. My daughter needs professionals, not fairy tales." But while the billionaire executive barked orders, Elena knelt beside Sophie. She didn't offer a pill or a lecture. She simply mirrored the child's frantic breathing, then slowly guided it toward calm. Catherine hissed from across the room, "What in the hell are you doing?" But her voice faltered as Sophie's sobs began to ease. Within minutes, what normally required heavy medication had passed naturally. Sophie blinked, her terror melting into relief. For the first time in weeks, the girl whispered, "Mommy." She made the bad feeling go away. Catherine stared at Elena with a mix of suspicion and unease. How had this ordinary woman achieved what the best specialists in the country could not? There was something unsettling in Elena's quiet confidence, as if she had seen this kind of suffering too many times before. In the days that followed, Sophie slept through the night, ate without distractions, and even returned to school without panic attacks. Catherine, however, remained unconvinced. Into the phone, she muttered to her assistant, "This is temporary. She's probably drugging my daughter with some herbal garbage. I want her entire background checked." The investigation returned results that only fueled Catherine's disdain. Elena Moore had no college degree. She had grown up in state orphanages. She had worked in modest homes. Nothing in her past, on paper, explained her sudden success with Sophie. How can this woman possibly understand a child of privilege? Catherine sneered, tossing the report aside. Meanwhile, in Sophie's bedroom decorated by European designers, laughter returned for the first time in months. Elena had invented a game called The Calm Warrior, where deep breaths became magical armor against frightening thoughts. She taught Sophie simple rituals to organize her space, giving her a sense of control that years of expensive therapy never provided. Catherine entered the room one afternoon, catching her daughter arranging books with pride. "You're filling my child's head with childish nonsense," she snapped at Elena later in her office overlooking the $2 million garden. "Sophie needs medical treatment, not games invented by someone who grew up in an orphanage." Elena didn't flinch. "Mrs. Lowell, when was the last time you spent an hour with Sophie? No phones, no meetings, just you and her." Catherine's face hardened. "Don't feed me your self-help garbage. I work 16 hours a day to give my daughter everything." "Everything but yourself," Elena murmured, almost too softly to hear. That was the breaking point. Catherine's rage boiled over. "You're fired." Elena didn't argue. She simply nodded and said, "Sophie will regress within 2 days. And when that happens, you'll search for another therapist, and another, and another. But remember what I said, your daughter doesn't need more experts. She needs to feel safe." Sure enough, 48 hours later, Sophie had her worst anxiety attack yet. She refused to leave her bed, screaming for Elena and her magic armor. Catherine, desperate, called in another psychiatrist who prescribed stronger sedatives. The girl collapsed into exhausted sleep, while her mother poured herself a drink in hollow victory. Across town, in a tiny apartment, Elena was not sitting idle. At her kitchen table, she organized pages of notes, screenshots, and transcripts. In her short stay at the Lowell mansion, she had seen and heard enough to know the truth. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked her younger brother Daniel, an investigative journalism student, peering over her shoulder. "I'm sure," Elena replied. Catherine Lowell didn't build her empire through genius. She stole patents from smaller developers, buried lawsuits with money, and even exploited her own daughter's medical data for marketing campaigns. Sophie isn't broken, reacting to the toxic world her mother created. Daniel's eyes widened as he scrolled through the evidence. "How did you get all this in just 3 days?" "Rich people make the same mistake," Elena said calmly. They treat staff as invisible. Catherine made incriminating calls right in front of me. She left documents lying around. She thought I was nothing. That arrogance is her downfall. A week later, Catherine gave a smug interview to a business magazine, boasting that she had proven professional methods always triumph over amateur intuition. The article went viral. To Catherine, it was vindication. To Elena, it was the final piece she needed. Soon after, Business Weekly received a mysterious packet of documents and hours of recorded conversations. Within days, headlines erupted. Tech mogul accused of patent theft, discrimination, and exploiting child's medical data. Former employees came forward. Investors panicked. Shares of Lowell Technologies plummeted. And on CNN, the calm Nanny herself sat across from an anchor, explaining, "Sophie doesn't suffer from a genetic disorder. She suffers because she lives in an environment where love is conditional on performance. She doesn't need more pills. She needs to be seen." The public was stunned. Catherine, once admired for her iron discipline, now looked like a ruthless tyrant who couldn't even care for her own daughter. Her empire crumbled within weeks. She lost her company, her mansion, and eventually custody of Sophie. For Sophie, however, it was liberation. Living with her father, she thrived in a simpler environment. The panic attacks vanished. She made friends, discovered drawing, and blossomed into an ordinary, joyful child. Elena, meanwhile, became a national figure. She testified before Congress on corporate abuse and child welfare. Universities invited her to lecture. Publishers begged for her story. She declined fame for its own sake, focusing instead on building an institute dedicated to protecting children. Catherine's downfall was brutal. Stripped of her empire, facing lawsuits and federal investigations, she eventually sought therapy not for Sophie, but for herself. "How could a nanny with no degree destroy me?" she asked her therapist one day. The therapist replied gently, "She didn't destroy you. She revealed who you really were when no one else was watching." It took years, but Catherine slowly rebuilt herself, not as a mogul, but as a mother learning finalito listen. She found a modest job, re-established trust with Sophie, and even managed, awkwardly, to thank Elena. 5 years later, a new federal law informally called the Elena Act passed, requiring tech companies to undergo regular diversity audits and face penalties for discrimination. At the signing ceremony, Elena took the podium. Catherine sat quietly in the back row. Their eyes met for a brief moment. There was no hatred, only the quiet recognition that both had been transformed by the same child. That evening, Sophie, now a teenager, celebrated her birthday in a modest backyard. Surrounded by friends, her father, Elena, and yes, even her mother, she blew out the candles. "I already have my wish," she whispered. "I wish that every child has someone like Elena, and that every mother learns what mine finally did, that love isn't bought, it's given." Catherine felt tears sting her eyes. She had lost billions, but she had gained something far greater, her daughter's trust. And in the end, it was an unqualified nanny who taught her the most expensive lesson of all, that true power lies not in control or wealth, but in the courage to love without condition.